And to me, movements like Voices for Indi or Warringah or Mackellar seem to be part of a movement that is not just looking for a share of public power for its own sake, but to be part of something, to experience that sense of freedom that arises when we participate in our own governance. Having said that, such participation is not always easy, it's not always fun, but on a very deep level, I think it can be joyous. The last chapter in my latest book that Leonie mentioned is called Joy. I sat in on the public galleries of this Citizens' Assembly that happened in Canberra in 1999 when we were looking at becoming a republic, and they got together 350 odd people into Old Parliament House in Canberra, and it went from Friday to Sunday night, and the 350 people heard from various experts on the yes side of the case and the no side of the case, and they got to deliberate on what they thought the outcome should be. It had absolutely no bearing on the final outcome, but it was a very interesting exercise. It was really the first time in Australia that we'd done this sort of citizens' assembly type of thing, and it was just interesting to note that they polled people before they went in, and the result was pretty resoundingly against the idea of a republic, and it completely flipped over the 3 days when they polled them again at the end. Most of them, having heard the arguments, seen the presentations, talked amongst themselves, talked with each other, got to question the various experts and the various advocates for the yes and the no case. Most people changed their mind. Anyway, the reason I mention that is one of the other things they did with that particular gathering was they interviewed the participants afterwards, and there's a lot of really interesting comments by the participants, but there's this one in particular that always stuck with me, and it was a gentleman who said, "Can I just say that as an elder citizen, that I've been tremendously informed and stimulated by this gathering. I would just like to say how wonderfully I've seen the democratic process at work." You might know that Ireland had a similar assembly recently to change their constitution so that family planning services were available to women in Ireland, and that was very successful. The constitution was actually changed, and one of the participants there said, "I'm almost sad it's coming to an end. It's been a life-changing experience for me." And I'm just pulling out a couple of quotes here, but nearly everybody you speak to who's involved in those processes says the same thing. Go and talk to Louise Hislop down here, who's one of the driving forces behind Voices for Warringah, and I think she would use similar words: life-changing, inspiring, even joyous, possibly. So just let me finish up here. I think what I really want to say is Voices of Mackellar, or all the other voices, may not succeed in unearthing their own Zali Steggall or Helen Haynes or whoever and then get them elected. But simply participating in the process itself is a democratic good, a way of helping making our country better. It's not a one-off event, it's an ongoing process. And remember, change always comes from the margins. The centre of power will always resist change, and the institutions of power are built to protect a status quo. This can be a good thing. It can provide stability in a nation, and that's a good thing. But all good things tend over time to atrophy and need change, and the centre will always resist change. Change will always come from the margins. The other thing to remember is that it tends to happen very slowly and then it happens fast, like bankruptcy. So even when you feel discouraged, understand that you are moving the debate, even if it doesn't seem like it. Change feeds upon itself to create more change in the same direction. Movements build and new ideas gain acceptance. It can feel like nothing is happening, until change suddenly seems to explode. Look what happened with equal marriage. Years, decades of people hitting their head against a wall. As recently as 5 years ago, you've probably still got, at best, a 50-50 result in any poll that was held. Then bam, suddenly we have a kind of a referendum and 70% of people vote in favour of it. Slowly then, all at once. So connect, build networks, use all the tools you have at your disposal to do that. Social media can be a really big help, but I've got to say, there's no substitute for face-to-face deliberation. You have to go and talk to people. In amongst all of this, the real enemy is despair. And those who hold power will always try and demotivate you and play on that despair. You can't let them. There's a saying in systems analysis that says the person or the people with the least integrity have the most options and therefore control the system. We have to break through that sort of cynicism, and the best way to do that is together as part of local movements that simply want better governance and won't settle for less. Change comes from the margins. So, Voices of Mackellar, I wish you every success over the next months, years, however long it takes, however long you do it. Thank you for having me here tonight. It's lovely to be back in my hometown. Thank you.